History remembers the victors, but it rarely pauses to ask, why do the mighty lose? Darius III was no minor king. He was the ruler of the largest empire the ancient world had ever known. An empire that stretched from Anatolia to the borders of India. He possessed gold, he possessed armies, he possessed land, and behind him stood an imperial legacy spanning centuries. Yet, in just a few short years, it all crumbled. This is not a story of cowardice, nor is it a story of numbers and armies. It is a story of leadership under pressure, a story of hesitation at the wrong moment, and a story of how power, when divorced from clarity and decisiveness, transforms from an advantage into a deadly burden. To understand Alexander the Great, it is not enough to look at his victories. We must first understand the man who defeated him. This is the story of Darius III, the king who had everything and lost everything. He was not the natural heir to the Achaemenid throne. His original name was Kotomanus. He belonged to a branch of the Persian royal family, close to the ruling house but not at its center. Father: Arsames, a Persian prince of the Achaemenid dynasty. He was not a king, but of direct royal blood. Mother: Sigampus, a noblewoman from the Achaemenid house. She would later become a pivotal figure after being captured by Alexander the Great. Alexander treated her like a queen and refused to humiliate her. Darius III belonged to the Achaemenid dynasty, the same dynasty founded by Achaemenids, following Cyrus the Great, then Darius I, then Xerxes. But here's the crucial point. Darius III was not from the direct ruling branch, but from a branch. This explains why he was not a natural candidate for kingship, and why he needed a political coup to seize power. And why was his legitimacy weak in the eyes of the nobility? Darius III, the last king of Achaemenid Persia. Darius belonged to the dynasty that ruled half the world, but from a branch that didn't directly ascend the throne. When the palace weakened, and kings fell one after another, Darius rose not by virtue of lineage, but by the power vacuum. A king who sat on a shaky throne, at a time when Alexander was approaching. And here lies the question about Darius. How was Darius made before he became king? Darius III wasn't raised as an heir to the throne, nor as a pampered child within the royal palace in Susa or Persepolis. He was born into a noble Persian family of Achaemenid blood, but far from the direct line of succession. This meant no early political preparation, no training in governance, no ready-made network of loyalties. And this was a structural weakness that would later haunt him, according to Greek and indirect Persian sources. Darius received the standard Persian aristocratic education, military training, horse riding, armoring, close combat, physical discipline. However, there is no evidence that he was a prominent military leader, nor that he led any major campaigns before ascending the throne. As for his Zoroastrian moral education, truthfulness, asha, aversion to lying, drudge, obedience and loyalty, this aspect is important because Darius was a man of values, in a world that doesn't spare values alone. And this is the most important question: what didn't he learn? And here lies the real problem. Darius did not learn what a king needs in times of crisis. He was not trained in managing a stagnant empire, dealing with scheming nobles, commanding multi-ethnic armies, making quick decisions under pressure. Meanwhile, his future rival, Alexander, was learning politics, philosophy, and warfare from childhood under the tutelage of Aristotle. Herein lies the unbridgeable gap. His first real role: soldier, not king. Before becoming king, Darius served as a minor officer or field commander. He is not remembered for any victories. His star rose only when kings were assassinated, the court weakened, the regime quickly needed a man of royal blood. His promotion came from nowhere, not from merit. And to conclude, we say, Darius III was not born a king. He was born a nobleman, not an heir. He learned to ride and to shoot, and was imbued with the Persian virtues of honesty and obedience. But he was not trained to rule, nor prepared for a storm the size of an empire. When he ascended the throne, he was a man of principle in a time of intrigue, and a soldier, facing a military genius. Darius was not stupid, nor was he a coward by nature. But he was made for an old order, and faced a new world. Why did Darius III fail to reform the empire? The truth is, it wasn't because he didn't want to. It was because he lacked the tools, the time, and the legitimacy. As we know, any radical reform requires clear legitimacy, elite support, and fear or respect. Darius lacked all three. Why? Because he came to power after a series of assassinations and wasn't chosen unanimously. The nobles saw him as a temporary solution, and any reform was interpreted as a direct threat to their interests. In such dysfunctional systems, reform is tantamount to a declaration of war. Secondly, the nobles were more powerful than the king, and this was a disaster. The late Achaemenid Empire wasn't as centralized as it's often portrayed. Governors possessed armies, tax collection, and local influence. The king needed them more than they needed him. If Darius had tried to dismiss them, reduce their powers, or restructure the army, he would have failed. The likely outcome would have been an internal rebellion, and another coup, and a faster collapse. Reform in a state without a strong central authority is self-destructive. Third, the army is not amenable to rapid reform. Here is a point many overlook. The Achaemenid army was not uniform in doctrine, not homogeneous in weaponry, and reliant on regional loyalties. Building an army resembling the Macedonian army, or a unified, professional army, required years, training, and a change in military culture. Darius did not have this luxury. An imperial army cannot be reprogrammed in months. Fourth, the economy serves stability, not change. The economic system was designed to collect taxes, appease the elites, fund the palace, not to general mobilization. A swift war, organic flexibility, any attempt to redirect resources, angers the nobility, and confuses the provinces, and it creates a silent resistance. Fifth, time, the invincible enemy. And here lies the fatal flaw. Between Darius's accession to the throne, Alexander's crossing into Asia, less than 2 years in reality. In those 2 years, there were rebellions, the consolidation of power, and an unprecedented external threat. Even the greatest reformers fail when time runs out. The harsh conclusion: Darius did not fail because he was stupid, cowardly, intellectually incapable, but because he inherited a system that could only be reformed from within, after it had become rotten. And any genuine attempt at reform would have brought it down before Alexander even arrived. And reform was more dangerous than stagnation. Did Darius have any strategic option other than direct confrontation with Alexander? Here is an analysis of Darius III's decision. Was his downfall the result of poor leadership or the logic of the system? We will discuss this and say, Darius did not make one single fatal mistake. Rather, he made logical decisions within an illogical system. This is the most dangerous type of failure. Analytical framework: I will evaluate Darius according to 4 axes: the strategic environment, the available options, the decision he made, why it seemed correct but failed. Keycap 1: the strategic environment. Darius was not playing a level playing field. Darius faced an opponent whose army was small but professional. Command was unified. Decision-making was centralized and swift. Objective was clear: to overthrow the regime, not to conquer territory. While Darius led a coalition of states, not a unified nation. Every decision required a balance of power among elites. He could not risk losing internal loyalties. A common analytical mistake: people compare Darius versus Alexander. The correct comparison is the Achaemenid regime versus the Macedonian war machine. Keycap to the available options, not theoretical. Here, let's debunk the myths. Option: a long war of attrition. It is often asked, why didn't Alexander engage in a war of attrition? Reality: the western provinces were of shaky loyalty. Any prolonged withdrawal would mean defections. Cities might open their doors to Alexander politically, and attrition would quickly erode the empire's prestige. Option: unconventional warfare, ambush. This assumes a flexible army, a unified field command, swift decision-making. The Achaemenid army lacked these qualities, and ambushes required what it didn't possess. Option: avoiding confrontation, politically impossible. A Persian king who avoids confrontation loses legitimacy, encourages rebellion, is perceived as weak. In ancient imperial systems, prestige is the primary weapon. Keycap 3: Darius's decision. Open confrontation. From Darius's perspective, a larger army, more resources, familiar territory, a long-standing Persian tradition of open warfare. The decision was rational according to the old rules of the game. And therein lay the problem. Keycap 4: Why did the decision fail despite its logic? A. Because he fought with an old ideology against a new war. Darius fought as an imperial king. Alexander fought as a revolutionary leader. Darius III didn't choose the wrong battle. He was born in the wrong time. He fought by imperial rules in a war that didn't recognize empires. He should have been less of a king, and more of a leader. But the system he created wouldn't allow him to change. Many of us wonder how Darius III came to power. First, the deadly background. Before Darius, the empire was headless. The Achaemenid Empire was at its worst politically. There were assassinations within the palace. The kings were figureheads, kings in name only, without real power. The real power lay with the commander, not the king. The key figure here was Pagoas, a eunuch minister and kingmaker. This figure cannot be ignored. If we ignore Pagoas, we will not understand Darius's rise. Second, the assassination of Artaxerxes III. Pagoas poisoned King Artaxerxes III. Then he killed his sons one by one. The aim was to control the throne without actually sitting on it. All sources agree that this was a complete palace coup, not a natural transfer of power. Third, Artaxerxes IV, the puppet king. He placed a weak young man on the throne. He was inexperienced, and had no base of support. He tried to rebel against Pagoas. And the result, he and his children were poisoned. And here the direct dynasty collapsed. Fourth, why Darius in particular? Now the real question. Why Darius? Darius was of Achaemenid blood, far removed from the center of the intrigues, had a good moral reputation, not affiliated with a powerful faction within the palace. In simpler terms, he was a safe choice, or so Pagoas thought. Fifth, the turning point. Darius kills the kingmaker Pagoas. Here is the great irony. Pagoas tried to poison Darius. Darius also discovered the plot, and forced Pagoas to drink the poison himself. And at this moment, the era of the puppet king ended. The reign of Darius III truly began, but he arrived too late. And here is the harsh truth. Darius did not ascend to the throne because he was the strongest, the smartest, the most deserving, but because he was the last man of royal blood standing. In a system that devoured itself from within. This changes the interpretation of all his subsequent defeats. Darius III did not come to the throne through inheritance, but through corpses in the palace. Kings poisoned, children murdered, an empire run from behind the scenes. He inherited a dying empire. He inherited an empire only on the map. 336 BC. Yes, a sprawling Achaemenid empire. But size does not equate to control. And it was. The eastern provinces were semi-independent. Asia Minor was rife with unrest. Egypt was newly rebellious. Phoenicia and Greece were under nominal obedience. The palace itself was unstable. This is not a powerful state. This is a large, weary one. The nobles knew that kings had been murdered before him, that the throne had become a palace game, that Achaemenid blood alone was no longer enough. And the result: cold obedience, conditional loyalties, and a constant readiness to defect. Every military commander in his province asked himself, should I fight for him or compromise on him? Third, the army, huge but fragmented. Armies of multiple ethnicities, different languages and cultures, and fighting styles. Local leaders more powerful than the king in their regions. Fourth, the economy and administration. A bloated state. Yes, the coffers were full, but the tax system was cumbersome. Bribery was rampant. Responsibilities were distributed without real oversight. Decision-making was slow, deadly in wartime. Darius did not inherit a flexible state apparatus, but an antiquated bureaucracy. Fifth, the biggest problem: time. And this is the unforgivable point. By the time Alexander knocked on the doors of Asia, the state had already begun to crumble from within. Darius lost because he inherited a system that could no longer be salvaged quickly. The battle between Darius III and Alexander. Not just one battle, but three decisive moments. The common misconception is that Darius lost one major battle. The reality: Darius lost a battle of wills across three confrontations. First, what did each side want? Let's start with Darius III. He wanted to protect the unity of the empire, preserve the king's prestige, avoid internal rebellion, win a decisive battle that would end the threat. Alexander wanted to shatter the image of the Persian king, defeat the leadership, not just the army, take the war to the psychological and political depths, overthrow the regime, not just achieve a military victory. Herein lies the fundamental difference. Darius fought to preserve. Alexander fought to destroy. First, the Battle of Granicus, 334 BC, the beginning that the Persians misread, at the Granicus River in Asia Minor. Darius was not present. What happened? Local Persian commanders confronted Alexander. The Macedonian army was underestimated, and a conventional battle ensued at the river. The result was a stunning victory for Alexander, the death or capture of Persian elites, and the successive fall of cities in Asia Minor. Herein lay the strategic error. Darius did not personally intervene. He left the confrontation to commanders lacking a unified vision. This was not merely a military defeat, but an early blow to prestige. Secondly, the Battle of Issus, 333 BC, the first face-to-face confrontation in a narrow pass near the coast. Darius was present personally, with a significant Persian numerical advantage. Darius's decision: a direct confrontation. Believing that numbers would decide the outcome, he disregarded the terrain. What actually happened? The narrowness of the field negated the numerical superiority. Alexander concentrated the attack on the command center, and a direct breakthrough towards Darius. And here's the crucial moment: Darius withdrew when he sensed danger. And here's the sensitive point: it wasn't cowardice. It was fear of total collapse if he were killed. The result: a Persian defeat, the capture of Darius's family, and a severe psychological blow to the legitimacy of the monarchy. After Issus, Darius was no longer the invincible king. Third, the Battle of Gaugamela, 331 BC, the last chance, and the wrong choice. It was an open plain, specially prepared for the Persians, and it was the largest army Darius had ever assembled, with chariots, cavalry, and infantry. Theoretically, the terrain was ideal for the Persians. Their numbers were overwhelming. The preparations were extensive. In practice, Darius repeated the same mistake, with a conventional battle and a fixed command post. And he waited for Alexander's attack instead of dictating the tempo. As for Alexander's tactic, he executed a flanking maneuver, and deliberately created a gap, and a direct assault on Darius. And here's the fatal moment. Once again, Darius retreats, and the army collapses psychologically. The army wasn't defeated when the king retreated. Rather, it collapsed because the king retreated. And here's the crucial question. Why did Darius lose every battle despite his superiority? 1. Because he fought as a king of order, protecting the center, avoiding risk, maintaining the imperial form. 2. Because Alexander fought as a leader of change, taking risks, titling headlong, unconcerned with losses as long as the outcome was decided. At Granicus, they mocked Alexander. At Issus, the throne trembled. At Gaugamela, the very idea fell. Darius wasn't defeated in a single battle, but rather lost 3 opportunities to be less a king and more a leader. After the final conflict, what happened to the Achaemenid Empire? First, the collapse wasn't immediate, but rather gradual. After Gaugamela, 331 BC, the empire wasn't completely destroyed militarily, but it lost its nerve center. In ancient empires, the fall of the capital meant the fall of legitimacy, not necessarily the fall of all armies. Second, the fall of major capitals without real resistance. Alexander entered Babylon, and the gates were opened to him. In Susa, enormous treasures were looted without a fight, and in Persepolis, the symbolic capital fell. Herein lies a pivotal moment. The burning of Persepolis, partially or symbolically, a clear message: the old order is over. An important point to understand: many cities didn't fight, because they no longer saw Darius as a king capable of protecting them. Third, loyalties fractured. Each region went its own way. After the defeat, governors began to negotiate, wait, or engage in silent betrayal. The truth is, no one wants to die for a defeated king. And here we see the harsh truth. The empire was built on obedience, not loyalty. What happened to Darius himself? Fourth, escape, not cowardice, but loss of position. And here began the pursuit of Darius III. Alexander wasn't pursuing a king, but legitimacy. And here's an analytical error many fall into. Alexander didn't pursue Darius out of revenge, but because he understood that Darius's continued existence meant a legitimate alternative to rule. During the escape, Darius gradually began to lose everything. Soldiers dwindled, nobles withdrew, governors hesitated, allies became mere observers, and most dangerous of all, those who remained with Darius no longer believed in him, but feared falling with him. And betrayal began from within. This was the true end. Bessus was one of the leading nobles and governors. Bessus turned to Bactria and moved closer to Darius. He realized that Alexander was rapidly approaching. Any surrender of Darius alive would mean the loss of his position. Any defense of him would be political suicide. He saw that Darius had become a burden. He had him captured. He declared himself King Artaxerxes V. Darius was captured and bound. He was carried as a prisoner in the procession of fugitives. And here is the shocking moment. Darius was not captured by Alexander, but by his own nobles. As Alexander drew near, Bessus feared that he would surrender Darius alive, that Alexander would spare him, and he would be eliminated. So the final decision was made. Darius was stabbed and left bleeding in a chariot. When Alexander arrived too late, he found the king of Persia dying, without an army, without a crown, without a state. Alexander pursued Darius because he was a symbol. His nobles seized him because he had become a burden. Darius did not fall on a battlefield, but in a chariot of fugitives. And when Alexander found him dying, he found not an enemy, but a king whose system had failed him before time itself. According to ancient accounts, Alexander wept at the sight of Darius. He covered Darius's body with his cloak. He gave him a royal burial, and he pursued his murderers mercilessly. Herein lies the political message. I am the heir to the empire, not the murderer of its king. Darius was not the military incompetence he is often portrayed to be. The common narrative, as we know, is that Darius was a weak king who didn't understand war. This is a gross oversimplification. The reality is that Darius fought with personal courage. In some situations, he personally led armies, which was not common among all kings. He also wisely chose Gaugamela as his base of operations. The problem wasn't a lack of military understanding, but rather the political constraints that bound him. He wasn't a leader with the freedom to make decisions like Alexander. The common misconception is that defeat is equated with stupidity. Darius tried to negotiate intelligently, but at the wrong time. After Issus, Darius offered a huge ransom, proposed marriage to Alexander with his daughter, and offered the lands west of the Euphrates. This was an attempt to end the war. Darius's death marked the end of a political model, not just the end of a king. This wasn't the end of a man, but the end of an idea of governance. Darius III was not the worst of the Persian kings. Rather, he was the last to attempt to rule, with the mindset of an aging empire, in an era where a new kind of leader was being born. He did not lose because he was inferior, but because the world had changed, and he was not allowed to change with it. Darius III was not a mad tyrant, nor a foolish king as the victors' narratives portrayed him. He was a man who sat upon a throne heavier than his individual strength, and an empire that had already crumbled before his reign even began. Darius lost to Alexander, yes, but the defeat was not confined to the battlefield of Gaugamela. It was a defeat in a decaying political system, a corrupt elite, loyalties bought and sold. Alexander triumphed because he moved with the speed of a new age. Break the rules, created legitimacy through force and then through ideology. Darius, on the other hand, attempted to rule with the mindset of the past. Maintain a balance that no longer existed. History was not kind to him, for history is written by those who survive, not those who fall. But the most important truth is this: Darius was not the worst of the Persian kings, but the last. The last to try to stop the collapse instead of rebuilding from scratch. And here is a lesson that never fades. Empires do not fall when they are defeated militarily, but when they fail to change in time.